Okay, we have a lesson on the economics of decision making. It is a three-part lesson. It goes into some considerations of how to make economic decisions for the best result, and it concludes with very real techniques to help you and others make the best decisions in your life. For today's first of three lesson, the vocabulary we need and will be using. Trade-offs is anything given up when a choice is made. Okay, if you make a choice and then you are unable to obtain things, they are trade-offs. Trade-offs can be positives or negatives. You may want something, but you make a choice and you can't get it, so trade-offs. Costs are negative results of a choice. If you make a choice and in comes a what you consider negative result, that's a cost. The opposite of cost is benefit, a positive result of a choice. Now, an economic term is externality, an effect on somebody who is not involved with the choice or the business, okay? So if you make a choice and it has an effect on someone who doesn't even know you or wasn't involved in the choice, or if you are affected by a business that made a choice and you have no relation with the business, that effect is called an externality. Be aware, many people who want to sound smart are currently using the term externality. It is a buzzword in economics, and now they might be smart using it, but it's a big word and people love to use it. So be aware, know what it means, and it does not automatically mean the person who uses it knows what the heck they're talking about. It's a very hot word right now, externality. The word utility is just another word for satisfaction. It's more complicated, but if you think of satisfaction, you can use it as a synonym of utility. And finally, it is an official economic term, guns and butter. It is for when the government has to make a choice between military spending and domestic spending at home. That definition right there, government choice between military spending versus at-home spending, is probably a better definition for guns and butter. So let's stick with the basic definition of economics, the study of satisfying needs and wants by choosing to use scarce resources to produce goods and services. So the most classic example taught to all first-year economics students is the government decision, the example of guns versus butter. Let us, for now, because this isn't true, some of it's not true, let us take for a given, though, that the government has limited resources, tax money. That's true, sort of. And unlimited wants. For example, the government, given the choice, would have an unlimited military, guns, and they would also unlimitedly spend money on domestic and at-home spending. We call that butter. But since resources, tax money is limited, they must choose to use the scarce resources of money to produce guns and butter, military and domestic spending, and they have to make a choice of where to put their money. So this is the very basic governmental economic choice. And so the choices are made. Let me go into a little aside before I tell you the choices are made. Some may ask, and this is an interesting in-depth question, why are governments spending unlimited? Almost all government representatives in the United States would like to spend more money. There are very few, okay? There are very few that when given the money would not spend it, okay? It is true that there are a few that would not spend it. But even those who want to cut spending want to increase spending in other areas. So almost every representative in government wishes to increase spending. Now, why is that? Well, there's many different reasons, and this is just going off on an aside. Sometimes the representatives really believe that spending money will be for the benefit of everybody. So they firmly believe in their hearts that spending money helps society. Sometimes government officials, and this is not right, want to spend money to enrich their friends and their business associates. Not a good thing, but it is true that sometimes that happens. It is also true that spending money is popular. So if a government official spends money on programs that their voters want, the voters will be happy with the representative and elect them again. So spending money is one of the things the representative can do to get more votes. And it is a very real thing that many representatives want to be elected again. So spending money is one of the ways to do that. Spending money is also a way to come to a compromise with people you don't agree with in government. So many times to get an agreement on a law, representatives will spend money. The end of this is that over the past decades, I would say almost over every single decade since the start of the U.S., that government spending has increased. And of course, tax money has increased, but not as much as spending. So the government has to borrow every year. We'll get to that. So that's a little aside on why the government spends money. So in an ideal world, we're back to the notes. In an ideal world, or at least the world it used to be, government had a limited amount of tax money. And so during peace, the representatives made a choice saying, well, we have 100% of tax money. We as a federal government will spend 80% of that on domestic issues, non-military budget, and 20% on a military budget to keep the guns and the tanks and the bombs and the planes and the ships going and ready for war. Because actually, one of the most important functions of government is to protect the country so the country is not getting taken over. Now, this is the military is ready during peacetime, but if there's war, then more money must be spent. So during war, and these numbers are, as far as I can tell, what happened during World War I and World War II. That the government stopped spending, and well, they borrowed more money and they spent more money on the military. So let's say during World War I and possibly II, 50% of government spending went to domestic issues at home and 50% were funneled into the military. Okay. Now they achieved that 50-50 by cutting a little bit that they spent at home and also borrowing a little bit of money with war bonds and stuff like that. And so you get a 50-50 government dollar spending percentage for military during war and at home spending. And then when it goes to peace, it goes back to 20% is the military and 80% is on other issues. You can go, and we will go later in the course and see if this is correct for the current year. Now, here's a note. This choice is not really hard anymore for the government. Currently, the U.S. does not make this choice. They don't cut spending if they want to spend more. So if they want to spend more at home things, they don't cut the military. And if they want to spend more on military, they don't cut the other things. Government may cut, but it's not so they have more money for something else. Because the government, every single year that you've been alive, is borrowing money to pay the bills. So if the government wants to increase military spending, they just borrow more. If the government wants to make at-home programs, they just borrow more. There is no choice anymore in the U.S. government. They do not choose to reduce spending to increase somewhere else. They may say they do, but in reality, the government borrows the money to pay for their spending every single year. But it is still important to know how the decisions were made back in the very early 1900s and the 1800s. So now I would like to go into another way to consider economics. It is a powerful and empowering and personal way to use the concept of economics for real-world gains in your own life. And that's not necessarily to think of economics as a study, and also not a way to think about economics as using your own resources. Let's focus in on the word choices. Okay, you'll hear a lot of economists say choices, but they focus in on resources and such like that. They don't focus in on the choices themselves. When we focus in on two ideas, choices and utility, we get something amazing. Economics, you can look at it as the thoughtful choices to increase utility. Remember, utility is what you determine is satisfaction in your life, in your community, in your country. And choices is what you do. So really, economics is you, making choices to increase your satisfaction with your life. Now, here's a note. You can make choices different ways. Economics would be thoughtful. People make choices, unthinking choices based on patterns. They make emotional choices based on the overwhelming emotions they feel at the time. They make instinctual choices. These would not fit into the choice theory of economics because other things, You're not considering the choices, and you're not considering the costs, benefits, and trade-offs. The choice version of economics has to be conscious. For example, my cats are not engaging in this theory of economics. They eat because they are hungry. They are literally, they are conditioned. They are instinctual. They are emotional. Everything about my cat, they do not self-reflect on their life. They do not think things through. And because they are not thinking things through, they are not thoughtfully making choices. As the great philosopher, the great Greek philosopher once, quote, said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Socrates' whole idea of philosophy is to examine what the truth of life is. And now I would take his ideas further. Socrates was fully on finding the truth of life. Well, once you can fully examine your life or the choices, you can then engage in economics, those choices, to better create satisfaction and utility. So Socrates recognized that if you're not examining things, you don't have agency over your own life. You are reacting to the world instead of evaluating and being an agent of the world. So some of the concepts we need to know to be able to think of economics this way is trade-offs. You have to examine, whenever you make a choice, what are you giving up? Costs. If you make a choice, what are the negative repercussions, the negative effects of your choice, and what are the benefits, the positives? And you can, to make a full examination of a choice, you should probably consider the externalities. How will your choices, whether it's a cost or a benefit, affect other people that aren't involved in your choices? Okay? So choices you make are good for other people, and they have negative effects for other people, and you should take those into considerations. Now, if we examine a situation, we have to make a choice. We examine a situation and we weigh all the costs, all the benefits, and eventually we choose. We make the hard choice, well, sometimes easy, choose to create the best utility, the greatest satisfaction when we weigh all the costs and benefits. Now, sometimes this is so easy. The costs are so much greater than the benefits, so we just don't make that choice. I will use an obvious example with a little humor just to prove the point. Every day I wake up and I have a choice. Do I repeatedly punch myself in the head? Well, everyone has that choice, but the costs of doing that so outweigh the benefits, I just don't do it. Think about it. It makes logical sense. Sometimes the benefits are so much greater than the costs, it is a snap, easy decision. I'll use a personal one. You may not agree. The benefits of me putting on a seatbelt when I go in a car are so much greater than the costs and the eventual possibilities that it's a snap, easy decision. I always do it. I don't think about it. I've thought about it a few times, and the benefits are always so much greater than the costs. It's just snap, easy decision. Now, we get into a little tough realm when the benefits are kind of equal to the costs. You have a couple choices. Maybe it's which job to go into, or which branch of a military, or which college to go to. There's a lot of benefits for some and a lot of costs, and it's really tough. It's a tough decision to figure out where you should go. And some of our biggest decisions are when we can't really see the benefits or the costs, or we don't really know. Now, this idea of thoughtfully choosing things to increase satisfaction and utility, it's not easy. Sometimes it's difficult to actually weigh and know the costs and the benefits. Now, first off, you have to think, you have to be able to understand all the trade-offs, all the costs, all the benefits, all the externalities. You have to have enough knowledge to know what your choices will happen with the effects of your choices downstream. And then once you know the effects of your choices, then you have to weigh their impact, and you have to weigh literally how much satisfaction an effect will give or take away from you. This is not easy. It is easy to understand that we go through this process, but it is not easy to do. And that's why people get very paralyzed on the big choices of what do I do next year? Where do I go next year? What's my job going to be next year? The big choices. Do I get married or not? With this person or not? These big choices are very difficult because the effects, knowing and weighing the utility of the effects is very difficult. It's very interesting that sometimes a decision can create, utility is not happiness or pain, okay? That's a different philosophy. Utility is satisfaction. Sometimes a decision creates a lot of pain and unhappiness, but the benefits still outweigh the costs. I am thinking about people who make sacrifices in their jobs. Like, let's just take firefighters who make the decision to put lives. Sometimes they make the decision to put their lives on the line and to become horribly hurt and to experience the pain of getting hurt, or possibly the unhappiness of their own deaths. But they choose that the benefits of saving someone else still outweighs the cost of their own possible pain. Literally saving someone's life is worth it to them to go through years and years of pain because they were hurt saving someone's lives. So it's not about pain versus pleasure that people make these hard decisions. And sometimes a decision creates intense pleasure and happiness. I can think of many decisions that create intense pleasure and intense happiness, but people choose not to make those decisions because they realize that the costs, the ultimate satisfaction in their lives, is outweighed the benefits of temporary pleasure and happiness. So this is not just go for what makes you happy and avoid what is painful. This is a serious deep dive into the effects of your choices. This is a way to look at both personal economics, governmental economics, neighborhood economics, and it's the focus in on the choices and the results. So there's a lot of lines of thought to think about if one is believing in an individual choice model of economics. And there's a lot of lines of thought to think of what that would mean for society, what that means for the individuals. Here's one line of thought, and you can think of your own effects of believing in a choice model of economics. One line of thought is you control you, okay? With great choice comes great responsibility. Now, I didn't come up with that. Many people say that online, okay? So I can't say that. It's very similar to Stan Lee's Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. See, that's different. That's something a government might believe in. With great power comes great responsibility, or someone with a lot of money or a lot of influence. But this is with great choice comes great responsibility. It's the responsibility that you, for a large portion of many choices, are responsible for your own outcomes because it's your job to understand the effects of your choices. And that is so much responsibility. When you sit and decide that it's your job to evaluate the effects of your choices and make the best choice for you and your family and your neighborhood and your country, well then, once you start believing in that, you have to live with the results because you made those choices. And you have the responsibility to try to make the best choices, which means you have to be informed and you have to sit and think about things. And you have to learn. We will learn ways to easily make some choices. And the more tools in your toolbox to make a choice, the better it is. Now, governments and philosophers typically don't like this. Why? Because it's a simple way to look at the world. It reduces almost all philosophies or ways of life or government systems to individual choice, individual thought, individual agency. It's not just follow the rules for rules' sake. It's not just the, I think it's the utilitarian version of philosophy or the hedonistic version of philosophy that says we all just follow our own pleasures or something like that. There is no universal philosophy coming. Professors come up with these modes of ways of looking at things because this might be the universal philosophy. It makes many other fields of studies just suggestions. It makes many other ways of governments just suggestions on what we consider, what the individual considers when they make their individual choices. It makes individuals incredibly empowered because we are making our own economic choices and trying to get the most satisfaction in our lives, in our family lives, in our country's lives. It is incredibly empowering, but there are some negatives of why people push back. It's difficult and time-consuming to accurately know the cost and the benefits. And because I've read articles on this, many people who promote strong governments or many people who promote college-educated philosophies do not trust large numbers of people to go through the time-consuming and difficult process of evaluating the consequences of their choices. And so they argue that this might not be the most effective way to run a country. This might not be the most effective way to run individuals or families. See, certain thoughts, certain schools of thoughts want to remove the empowerment of the individual because they don't trust the individual to do it well. So it very well might not be the most quote unquote effective for a population or a country or a family. It might not be. That's to be determined. All I can tell you is for me, because I am willing to take the responsibilities of my choices. I am willing to put the time in. I am willing to try my hardest to accurately know the costs and the benefits of my choices. I'm willing to put in the work. And for me, the positives is that it is incredibly empowering as an individual in a family and a working community. And it gives me a sense of agency that I can act upon my own world. And to me, that is the positive. And it is so simple. It doesn't mean I don't listen to other people's ideas of the world. It does not. Because I need to understand every view of the world to be able to evaluate the costs and the benefits. It's an incredibly inclusive and empowering way to look at the world. You get a professor, the 8 years PhD, that wants to say the world is this way. I need to listen to them to understand what they know. And then I can put it into my own choices. I need to understand everything. Very, very empowering. All right. And that's it for first of 3 in decision makings. We'll come back and I'll give you simple tools to help make simple decisions or hard decisions in your life. Great. Thanks for watching.